Welcome all of you to this open learning system. Today I am going to discuss on a very important chapter of Indian freedom movement, that is the role of extremists, or we may say the extremist phase in Indian National Congress or in Indian freedom movement. Dear friends, the role of extremist is narrated by historians in different interpretations. But as a whole, we may say the role of extremists for the Indian independence is highly acceptable, and their role, their activities laid the great foundation for the achievement of Indian independence. Now see, the partition of Bengal in 1905 provided the flair for the rise of extremists in the Indian national movement. They were called extremists because they believed that success could be achieved only through bold means. The political orientation of extremists originated within the Congress from the anti-partition Bengal agitation. When the British government refused to annul the partition of Bengal in face of mass protests of the people of Bengal arousing sympathy of the Indian people, that disillusioned many young leaders came to known as new nationalists or extremists. The important extremist leaders were like Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Aurobindo Ghosh. They were called extremists because they believed that success could be achieved only through bold means. Now see, what are the reasons for the rise of extremism in India during Indian freedom movement? The first thing is that the failure of the moderates to win any notable success other than the expansion of the legislative councils by the Indian Council Act 1892. And the famine and plague of 1896-97 was not eye-opening for the exploitative policy for British, which degraded the economic condition of people. Then the color discrimination Indians in South Africa. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904-1905 events play important role in national awakening. The leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who is also called Lokomanya, through his weeklies, the Kesari, written in Hindi, written in English, was a revolutionary weapon to attack the rule of British. In 1916, he set up Home Rule League at Pune and given slogan, Swaraj is my birthright and I will have it. Lala Lajpat Rai, he is also called the Lion of Punjab. He played an important role in the Swadeshi movement. His famous slogan, Go Back Shining. The Bipin Chandra Pal, another great extremist leader, was turned extremist from moderate. He played an important role in the Swadeshi movement. He spread his ideas of nationalism through the nook and corner of India by his powerful speeches and writings. Aurobindo Ghosh was another extremist leader and took active participation in the Swadeshi movement. And India was partitioned because Bengal is known as the all centers of India. It was carried out by the British Viceroy of India Lord Curzon in 1905. It was partitioned due to following reasons. One, to break the growing strength of Bengali nationalism, since Bengal was the base of Indian nationalism. To divide the Hindus and Muslims in Bengal, to show the enormous power of the British government in doing whatever it liked, but the partition gave vibrant color of real awakening in freedom struggle, mass movement, which laid the foundation of boycott and Swadeshi movement. In the beginning of the 20th century, a new class of national leaders emerged in India, which was different from the moderate groups. They took a more aggressive stance against the British Empire. They were typically younger and did not believe in the soft and persuasive approach of moderate leaders. The extremist phase of Indian nationalism is from 1905 to 1919. Now see the background of the rise of extremism. The failure of the moderate leaders in getting any significant results from the British authorities. The limitations of the moderates were the main causes for the rise of extremism. And the partition of Bengal in 1905 opened the eyes of the Indians to the true colors of the British rulers. Lord Curzon and his disdain for anything Indian also created resentment and anger against the foreigners. There was a fear among some leaders that the moderates, with their westernized notions, were trying to create an India in the image of West. There was a revival of national pride at that time. The extremist leaders were also influenced by the growth of spiritual nationalism at that time. The Delhi Darbar held in 1903, when people had not fully recovered from the horrific effects of the famine that killed lakhs of people, drew widespread condemnation. Events happening around the world also inspired the extremist leaders. Abyssinia's successful repulsion of the Italian army in 1896 and Japan's defeat of Russia in 1905 shattered the notion of European invisibility. Other national movements like in Persia, Egypt, Turkey also motivated the Indian leaders. The difference between the moderates and the extremists became official in the Surat session of the Indian National Congress held in 1907. The meeting was to take place in Nagpur that year. The extremists wanted Lala Lajpat Rai or Bal Gangadhar Tilak to be the president, but the moderates wanted Rasbihari Ghosh as president. There was a rule that the session's president could not be from the home province. Tilak's home province was Bombay Presidency, in which Surat was also situated. So the moderates changed the venue to Surat to Tilak could be excluded from the presidency. The moderates also wanted to drop the resolutions on Swadeshi, boycott movements, and national education. Rasbihari Ghosh became the president in the session which was held at Surat. Tilak was not even allowed to speak, and this angered the extremists who wanted to cancel the session. Both sides were far on their demands, and neither was willing to find a common path. The moderates then held a separate meeting in which they reiterated the Congress' goal of self-government within the British Empire and to adopt only constitutional methods to achieve their goals. Unfortunately, the Surat session was marred by the use of sticks and chappals by the members on one another. Now see, what are the methods of extremist leaders? The extremist goal was Swaraj. This at that time either meant complete autonomy and freedom from British control, or a total Indian control over the administration, but not necessarily a breakaway from Britain's imperial reign. This was in contrast to the moderates' demand of only an increase in the share of Indians in the administration and military upper echelons. The extremist leaders involved wider sections of people in the movement. They involved lower middle class people also. They did not stick to constitutional methods to protest and demand. They resorted to boycotts, strikes. They also burned foreign-made goods. They believed in confrontation rather than persuasion. The Swadeshi movement gathered momentum in India because of the extremist support. This led to the establishment of Indian banks, mills, factories, so on. They were strongly against the British imperialistic policies in India. They took pride in Indian culture and history. They looked at the ancient scriptures for inspiration and courage. They believed in sacrificing everything, including life, for the cause of the motherland. They opposed westernization of Indian society by the British. Tilak famously said, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it." They were very vocal in their opposition to the British rule, unlike the moderates who had faith in British justice. They tried to instill self-respect and patriotism in the people by invoking past heroes like Ashoka, Shivaji, Maharana Pratap, and Rani Lakshmi. They did not believe in loyalty to the British crown. The leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, popularly known as Lal Bal Pal, clear, leading the extremist cause in Punjab, Bombay, and Bengal presidency, respectively. Other leaders included Aurobindo Ghosh, Raj Narayan Bose, A.K. Dutt, V.O.C. Pillai, all these things. Now, while the extremism activities was going on, now see the reaction of the government. The government attacked the extremist leaders vigorously. Laws were passed to check their activities and influence. The following laws were passed between 1907 and 1911. Seditious Meeting Act 1907, Indian Newspapers Act 1908, Criminal Law Amendment Act 1908, and the Indian Press Act 1910. Tilak was sentenced and served in prison in Mandalay, now it's Burma, for writing in support of revolutionaries who were involved in the killing of two British women. Bal Gangadhar Tilak organized Ganpati and Shivaji festival to spread the message of boycotting westernization in India. This was a major social reform and had a larger impact on society. The slogan, "Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it," by Tilak was a talk of society. British goods and national education was boycotted, which brought a major changes in the economy of the country and gave way to employment and various other opportunities for the Indians. There was a major reform in education across the country as the extremists worked on establishing national universities free from government control. This is all about the activities of extremist leaders during Indian national movement for Indian independence. This is a brief discussion on the role and activities of extremist leaders and extremist phase under Indian independence movement. Thank you all.